The Iron Curtain. Complete speech. Winston Churchill. I am pleased to have come to Westminster College this afternoon, and also that they have done me the honor of conferring upon me the doctorate. Today the United States stands at the pinnacle of the Tower of Power. It is a solemn moment for American democracy, because this primacy of power is accompanied by an impressive responsibility for the future. If you look around you, you should not only have the feeling of duty fulfilled, but you must feel the fear of not achieving all that you have set out to do. It is necessary that the constant spirit, the unwavering purpose, and the great simplicity in decisions guide and govern in peace as in war the conduct of the English-speaking peoples. In this obligation we must prove ourselves equal, and I believe we will do so. I have a practical and concrete proposal to make. Courts and judges can be appointed, but they cannot function without sheriffs and police. The United Nations organization must immediately begin to provide itself with an international army. I propose that all powers and all states be invited to delegate a certain number of their air squadrons for the service of the World Organization. One could start on a modest scale, to grow as confidence grew. I would have liked to see this done when the First World War ended, and I trust with all my heart that it can be done immediately. Nevertheless, it would be an error and an imprudence to entrust the secret knowledge or experience of the atomic bomb, which is today shared by the United States, Great Britain, and Canada, to the international organization while it is in its infancy. No one in any country has slept worse in their bed because this knowledge, these methods, and the raw materials that must be used are mostly in American hands today. I do not believe that all of us would have slept so peacefully if the situation had been the opposite, or if some communist or neo-fascist state had monopolized these fearful resources until now. God has willed that it not be so, and we at least have a time to breathe and put our house in order before facing this danger. And even then, if no efforts are spared, we will continue to possess such a formidable superiority that it will be enough to effectively deter their use or threats to use them. And now I will speak of the second danger of these wrongdoers who threaten the estate, the house, and ordinary people, that is tyranny. We cannot be blind to the fact that the freedoms enjoyed by each citizen throughout the British Empire do not exist in a considerable number of countries, some of which are great powers. In these states, ordinary people are controlled by different types of all-encompassing police governments. Today, when difficulties are so many, it is not our obligation to forcibly intervene in the internal affairs of countries we have not conquered in the war. But we must never cease to fearlessly proclaim the great principles of freedom and human rights, which are the common heritage of the English-speaking world that, through the Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, habeas corpus, trial by jury, and English common law, find their most famous expression in the American Declaration of Independence. All this means that people of any country have the right, and should have the capacity recognized by the Constitution, to choose or change, through free, unrestricted, and secret elections, the character or form of government under which they live. That freedom of expression and thought must prevail. That courts of justice, independent of the executive power and any party, should apply laws that have received broad consent from the majority, or are consecrated by time and custom. This represents the title deed of freedom that must exist in all homes. This is the message that the American and English peoples address to humanity. War cannot be safely prevented, nor can the World Organization progress continuously without what I have called the Fraternal Association of the English-speaking peoples. The Fraternal Association not only requires the development of friendship and mutual understanding of our two very broad but similar social systems, but the continuity of close relationships between our military advisors, leading to the common study of possible dangers, the similarity of weapons and instruction manuals, and the exchange of officers and cadets in training centers. A shadow falls upon the scenes so lately lighted by the Allied victory. No one knows what Soviet Russia and its Communist International Organization intend to do in the immediate future, or what are the limits, if any, to their expansive and proselytizing tendencies. I have a great admiration and esteem for the valiant Russian people, and for my wartime comrade, Marshal Stalin. In Great Britain, and I do not doubt also in the United States, there exists a deep sympathy and goodwill toward all the peoples of Russia and a willingness to persevere, despite the many differences and many slights, in establishing a lasting friendship. We understand Russia's need to secure its western frontiers to remove any possibility of German aggression. We welcome Russia to its rightful place among the leading nations of the world. We welcome its flag on the seas. And above all, we rejoice in the constant, frequent, and increasingly numerous contacts between the Russian people and our own people on both sides of the Atlantic. However, it is my duty, because I am sure you want me to tell you things as I see them, to present to you some facts about the current position in Europe. From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent. Behind that line lie all the capitals of the ancient states of Central and Eastern Europe. Warsaw, Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, Belgrade, Bucharest, and Sofia. All these famous cities and their populations and the countries around them lie in what I must call the Soviet sphere, and all are subject, in one form or another, not only to Soviet influence but to a very high and, in many cases, increasing measure of control from Moscow, very strong, and in some cases increasingly strict. Athens alone is free to decide its future in elections under the supervision of the British, Americans, and French. The Polish government, dominated by Russia, has been pushed to make enormous and unjust incursions into Germany, and today the mass expulsion of millions of Germans is taking place on a scale unimaginable and of extreme gravity. The communist parties, which were very small in the eastern states of Europe, have been placed in prominent positions, have been granted power far superior to what they represent, and seek to gain totalitarian control everywhere. Police governments prevail in almost all cases, and for the moment, except in Czechoslovakia, there exists no genuine democracy. The security of the world requires a new unity in Europe, from which no nation should be permanently excluded. The wars we have witnessed, or those that occurred in earlier times, arose from disputes between peoples united by strong bonds. Twice the United States has had to send several million of its young people to war across the Atlantic. And today war can surprise any nation anywhere between East and West. There is no doubt that we must work for the pacification of all Europe, within the structure of the United Nations and in accordance with its charter. In a great number of countries, far from the Russian borders and throughout the world, communist fifth columns are established, working in perfect union and total obedience to the directives they receive from the communist center. I felt I had the obligation to show the shadow that, both in the East and in the West, hangs over the world. I was a High Minister at the time of the Treaty of Versailles, and a close friend of Mr. Lloyd George, who was the head of the British delegation at Versailles. I did not agree with many things that were done, but I have that situation very much engraved in my mind, and it pains me to have to compare it with what is happening today. In those days, there was much hope and unlimited confidence that wars had ended, and that the League of Nations would be all-powerful. In today's sickly world, I do not see or feel the same confidence, or even the same hopes. On the other hand, I reject the idea that a new war is inevitable, and much more that it is imminent. I am sure that our destinies remain in our hands. That is why I feel obliged to speak now that I have the opportunity to do so. I do not believe that Soviet Russia desires war. What they want are the fruits of war, and the indefinite expansion of their power and doctrines. But what we must consider here today, while there is time, is the permanent prevention of war and the establishment of conditions of freedom and democracy as soon as possible in all countries. Difficulties and dangers will not disappear because we close our eyes. From what I have seen of our Russian friends during the war, I am convinced that there is nothing they admire more than strength and nothing they respect less than weakness, especially military weakness. For this reason, the old doctrine of the balance of power is detrimental. If the Western nations stand together in strict respect for the Charter of the United Nations, their influence in fostering these principles will be immense. The last time I saw all this approaching, I proclaimed it to my countrymen and to the world, but no one paid attention. Until 1933 and even 1935, Germany could have been saved from the terrible fate that has befallen it, and we all could have been spared all the calamities that Hitler allowed to fall upon humanity. Never in history has there been a war so easy to prevent through timely action as the war that has just devastated large areas of the globe. But no one wanted to listen, and the terrible whirlwind engulfed us one after another. It is evident that we must not allow this to happen again. And this can only be achieved if today, in 1946, we reach a good agreement with Russia on all issues under the general authority of the United Nations Organization, and with the maintenance of that agreement throughout many years of peace through this world instrument supported by all the forces of the English-speaking world, and all countries related to it. There is the solution that with all respect I propose to you in this address, to which I have given the title, The Pillars of Peace. Speech. Westminster College, Fulton, Missouri. March 5, 1946.